Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. Do me a favor, put in the chat that you can see me, especially on LinkedIn. Just let me know what's going on. Technology is always fun, right? And this morning when I went live, because I always go live about 3 minutes ahead of time, and when I clicked live, it started going and then it ended. And the problem with this restreaming type activity where I reach out to you and train you, the problem with that is that if there's any hiccup in kind of the process, LinkedIn, in its wisdom, doesn't have the ability to recover, right? So it goes, "Oh, sorry, we're done. You've gone live and it's over." So let me know just you got a 5x5 in there, and I can push right into the training when I see the first person that says that. Great to see you guys engaging on chat. Remember, this is your community. It's me doing training today, but we also have the ability to do good training. Good networking in here. I'm looking at people saying you can see me. That's perfect. So let's get rocking and rolling. Put my screen the way I like it. And today we're going to be talking about how to do business with the Air Force, right? There's a huge spend in the Air Force and it's exciting, but how do you do business? And I want to give you training today on how to do that, how to have some success in the Air Force. We had a lot of people come in and very interested in this. And an interesting thing is that the Air Force doesn't do a really good job promoting themselves as how to do business with the Air Force. They've got a couple of sites, but frankly, when we got down to it for today's training, I ended up going back to my own content to be able to show you. Fortunately, it's really good and it's fairly recent. So that's going to be awesome. When you look at the Air Force's budget, it's huge. It's getting close to 300 million when you look at the Air Force and Space Force combined. So if you don't know this, the way the Air Force is organized is there's a Department of Air Force, and underneath that is the Air Force and the Space Force, two different commands. It's similar to what you might see over in the Navy, where you have Department of Navy and you have the U.S. Navy and you have the Marine Corps, U.S. Marine Corps. So anyways, when I talk, I kind of go back and forth between Air Force and Space Force, and I just call them both Air Force. But anyways, the budget is huge, $250 million for Air Force. And this rough numbers, right? But the budget just got passed. And the same thing for, not the same amount, but the same thing for Space Force. Their budget's out there, and it's roughly about $25 billion. The Air Force's budget has gone up, it looks like, which is pretty exciting. For those of us who play in the $1 million level, $10 million level, raising it 10 or $20 billion or so doesn't really have a huge impact on us, except for maybe it's opening up more opportunities. But I think they're buying more really expensive airplanes. And then there's a slight decrease in the Space Forces. So we just want to pay attention to that. You want to go into the budget and look, and you can see where the budget's decreased. And this is important because you figure out, what do you sell? What's your products and services? Look into the budget and go, are they buying less of what I'm doing? So an example is I was training on the Army, I think, or Department of Energy yesterday. And I was talking about how their minority economic outreach, the budget went from something like 20 million down to zero. It's like, okay, they have signaled clearly they're not doing that. But if you look at another office, they stood up, they funded it by $20 million or so. And this is around IT and artificial intelligence. It's like, okay, you can see they're standing up a new business. If I'm doing that kind of work, I dive in. The Air Force, same way. We can follow the path of the money in there. And just if you're tracking on this, because I'm doing training on how to do business, the Air Force right now is kind of sitting at the top of the largest department spend for FY 2026. Right below that comes the Navy and the Army. And then the number 4 place is DOD. And we call this the fourth estate. Basically, the fourth estate is all these agencies like DLA and DISA that are not the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And then you get into civilian agencies. VA is the largest civilian agency. And you got HHS. Okay, so they definitely need your products and services. That's what we're here to talk about today. How do you sell to them? How do you do business? If you want to do business with them, if that's what you're here for on today's training, do me a favor. Just throw U.S. Air Force or USAF rocks into the comments or chat. Really excited about talking about the Air Force today. As we break down today's training, I'm going to do it really fast into 4 sections. First, I want to talk about the Air Force's organizational structure. When you understand any entity's structure, any customer you try to go after, their organizational structure, you can quickly determine which offices you should not pursue so that you spend your energy on the ones that are most likely to buy what you sell. So we'll start with that and move into number 2, which is people who can help you navigate the Air Force. You can't do it alone. You got to build strategic relationships. And I'll talk about the type of people you can work with. And I'll actually show you a bunch today. And then 3 is be where the Air Force is looking. It's really important where the Air Force buyers are looking. It's really important to understand the Air Force does not buy from the best. They buy from the best who show up. If you don't show up, how are they supposed to know if you're even good, let alone the best, right? You need to be where the buyers are looking. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And then I'll wrap up with how do you find Air Force opportunities? This is huge. One of our top things to do as salespeople, and anybody who's on this call is basically in some sort of sales role, whether our title says that or not. And our job is to find opportunities that our companies can win. I want to give you some tips on how you can do that. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, founder of Call Plan AI, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business government contractor after I got out of the Army. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. I want you to be able to have predictable results within the Air Force. And that begins by understanding the Air Force and how do you get in? How do you find those opportunities? If you haven't followed me already, follow me on LinkedIn. I see a lot of people over from YouTube and X. Come on over here, and Facebook as well. Come on over to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's the only place we can have conversations. There's a lot of people in here that I'm looking at who I know interact with each other offline, separate from me, because they were able to connect here in the training. And then join the Government Contracting Success newsletter. This is the largest newsletter around government contracting on LinkedIn. My newsletter grows twice as fast as the DoD's newsletter. And this is a big deal because we keep providing quality content. You'll see this today because I had to go back and reference my newsletter to be able to give you good training for today. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then I think we have almost 200 people registered for tomorrow as well. The training is how to do business with the Navy. If you haven't registered, go register so you're part of that and you can learn more about doing business with the Navy. Okay, I just got to watch my time. Usually I have a different setup, but when LinkedIn throws me a little hiccup, I'm like, my setup's off. Okay, so let's get started with understanding the command structure of the Air Force and what's out there. I already talked about the DAF, the Department of Air Force, has got the Air Force and the Space Force. But I put here, are MAGCOMs dead? And MAGCOMs are what we used to call, and many of us still do call, they're major commands within the Air Force. And I'll talk about it in a second. There's this transition. But MAGCOMs are this term, and I say they're not dead. Not at all. They're never going to be dead. It's like the term PTAC. For those of us who've been in government contracting a long time, PTAC has been there for 40 years. It's in our head. And same thing with Twitter, right? I don't say X. I'm going to go over on Twitter. I think, just said it a minute ago. And so some of these things stick with us. But I do want to encourage you to understand the new organizational structure the Air Force is putting in place in 2025 here. The way they're starting to look at it, right? It literally used to be called MAGCOMs or something. But now they have service component commands, and I'll show you these in a second. Service component commands, and then they have institutional commands. These two are basically the old MAGCOMs kind of separated out by responsibility. And then the Space Force, something very similar. They have 4 field component commands and then service component field commands. They got 4 of those. So let me show you what those look like really quick. Put this here. Hopefully that's big enough. Okay, so I put this org chart. This is why I'm telling you, subscribe to my newsletter. This is the type of stuff I put out there. And when I went to try to find organizational information, you'd be amazed on how hard it is to find that on the internet. And in fact, I didn't even get this from the Air Force when I've gotten it multiple years in a row. I get it from this organization called Air and Space Force Association. So if you're interested in supporting the Department of Air Force, make sure you subscribe or belong to them, etc. And you can learn a lot about the Air Force. That's how I constantly keep learning about the Air Force's top priorities and other stuff. Is they're very tied in. I mean, they got a bunch of retired chiefs of staff of the Air Force who work there now, kind of thing. Okay, so I talked about component commands. And remember, the idea of understanding an organization is to understand what commands are worth pursuing and which ones aren't. So an example is Pacific Air Forces. That might not make sense for you. You have to go into these and learn what they do. There's a really good chance for most small businesses, air forces in Europe and Africa are not your target customers. So don't be going in there. And then you begin to understand, oh, the component commands, they tend to be a little bit more out, let's say on the edge in the field. And maybe you should be looking at the Air Force institutional commands, right? So if you begin to, now I've just tightened it down by half of the commands. If I look at the average small business out there under 20 million, it's like, hey, we should be looking at these institutional commands. The Air Combat Command, Air Force Material Command is a huge one where a lot of people will track on that. And if you start digging in there, you'll see it. And same thing as I come down Space Force, I don't want to spend a lot of time because I got to track my time. But if you come down here, you can see the same kind of thing on how they're tied, right? So here you're looking at the service component field commands are the ones that are out. Let's say they're out fighting the wars, right? And then the other ones are the ones supporting it to make it happen. And that's basically what these guys are. I'm not trying to give a whole official way of the Air Force commands. Something else to keep in mind, I don't know if I had it here. No, I probably have the next one because I have a couple of slides I just wanted to show as long as I'm here, right? I put this post out multiple times. This is the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center's org chart. They put it out every month. This is February, but if you go back into my network, you can certainly find July or August, and you can go on their website. They keep it pretty up to date. But in here, if you look, you need not to look too close, but if you look, you're seeing a breakdown of their entire org chart of this one command. It's not even a major command. It's a one command, and you start seeing how they're organized, and you start realizing, wow, not all of these offices within that are ideal for me, but I can find the ones that are good for me, and there's people in there as well. So that's something else to keep in mind. And here you just see another way of me showing it. There's a lot of information. Let me see if this last one has it. And that's just another one. So let me back away from this because just keeping track on my slides. The idea behind looking at the organizational structure is you want to understand an organization like it's a gold mine. In there is gold. Your job is to remove the dirt. The way you remove dirt from a gold mine, like the Air Force, is to determine which commands, which offices you should not go after. If you do cybersecurity, you don't have to go after construction. Even if there is like some little overlap, you're just wasting your time. You need to be in Cyber Command, whatever the Air Force's version of that is, right? And you need to be driving in there. Well, it's a really important thing to look across the entire command structure, not just look at something and go, oh, I can go into AFMC. No, go farther down in AFMC and begin to keep breaking it apart. Okay, hopefully that makes sense there. If it does, put org charts in the rock in the chat. Sometimes when you get this, if the lesson I'm trying to get across about the understanding on each one of these slides makes sense, throw a rocks into the chat. Let me know so I can watch that kind of scroll on the side. I watch YouTube videos. Sometimes they go, that's my love language. But we all like that. If we're creating content, I want to know I'm reaching you. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's talk about the people who can help you because you cannot go alone to success. I was talking to somebody this morning and she said, hey, can you confirm that the only way you can win contracts is, if you have relationships and that's who you know? And if you don't have that relationship, you don't win it. I said, well, no, that doesn't happen. I mean, that's not the way it is. I said, it certainly happens sometimes like that, but generally the federal government's pretty good about the acquisition lifecycle process being fair and across the board. They put out requirements, they listen to the proposals, and they move forward. And but you do need relationships to learn about the opportunity. That is sales. You need to be able to get in and talk to your customer, understand the challenges, the pain points, the goals. So who can do that for you? First one, my all-time favorite, is to find small businesses that are already winning within a agency or a command within the Air Force that you want to go after and reach out and talk to them. Ask them to make introductions. Ask them to guide you. Team up with them to try to go after work together. They can help you. Number two are the small business professionals within the Air Force. I think there's like 100 plus inside of the Air Force. When I go back to sharing my screen in a minute, I'll show you. I think I have it up still, but they've got a map and you can just click around on the map and find the person who's responsible for that. And so it's a great way to navigate. But if you don't know who small business professionals are, they're Air Force employees who are basically, their job is to help Air Force find the best small businesses that can work with them, right? They're not trying to give all of us small businesses a shot at the Air Force. They're trying to find the best small businesses that align to the mission and the requirement and then bring them in. Number 3 are small business liaison officers. These are similar to the small business professionals, except for these people work for the large primes like Booz Allen, Boeing, SOSI, and others, SAIC. Right? They work for those organizations. They do the same thing. How can I find small businesses that could support SAIC in order to support the Air Force? You can reach out to these people. So first you find out who's winning within the Air Force, within the areas you want to go to. Once you have that company name, let's say Booz Allen, then you go find a small business liaison officer. They're on their website. They're on LinkedIn. Plus, if you go to my newsletter, I've got a directory of all of the SBLOs that I could find. I've been a government contractor. I know how hard it is to find information, so I just keep consolidating it. Number 4, the SBA has a procurement center representative. These people have oversight over the Air Force, among other agencies, and so you can reach out to them and ask them for introductions into the Air Force, whether it's small business professionals, contracting officers, et cetera. Number 5, and you can go watch training. I have a training called 7 Mentors that basically talks much deeper into each of these type of people, what their role is and the responsibilities are and how they can help you do business with the Air Force. Number 5 is the PTAC or Apex Accelerator. Go talk to their counselors. They build relationships, especially the Apex Accelerator counselors who are near a military base. They know those people. They work together. They do training sessions or industry days together. Number 6, contracting officers. This should be an obvious one, right? But if you're trying to navigate within an agency, by the way, let me pause for a sidebar for a second. If you're brand new and you don't have, let's say you're $1 million or less, I would highly encourage you to just stay with number 1 for the moment. Go get tied in with other small businesses. They will make your life so much easier. When I say call the contracting officer, I generally don't mean you. I mean the rest of us. Because when you call the contracting officer, you need to know what you're talking about. Their time is really demanding compared to a small business professional. They're a lot looser. They're like, hey, let's talk, right? And they'll guide you. Contracting officers, they're precious. And so you want to make sure you treat them that way. But you can find them on FPDS, Federal Procurement Data System, fpds.gov for small business prime contractor winners, large contractors, and contracting officers. So I can go into FPDS, find a contract I wish I had won, top right-hand corner, I'll see the contracting officer or something that will guide me to them. By the way, if you are familiar with all these subscription tools, that's where they get the data. It's not like they make the data up themselves. They're pulling it from the government databases. So you have direct free access in there. Try it. Okay, and number 7 is the heads of contracting. I did a video, actually, well, I'll show you that in a minute as well, but I did a video interview with General Trevino, who was, up until very recently, the head of all Department of Air Force contracting. So I think she had like 7,000 or 9,000 contracting officers that are underneath her command. And there's all sorts of leadership levels coming up. Reach out to those people, build relationships. We do this all the time in the different military services with customers, and they're able to get relationships, or more important, get introductions to the right contracting officers in that world. Okay, so that's a lot of people you can talk to that will help you get navigating in there. Okay, so let's talk about, and I know I'm moving at a fire hose pace, but it's because I've done these trainings enough to know I better hurry up or I'm not going to get it all out. But my goal here with this training is to help you have a taste of understanding. Do you understand you need to go to org charts and really begin to understand the organization of the Air Force if you want to do business with them? Yes, then put org chart rock, right? Do you understand you need to meet people and you need to have relationships with people? So that second slide is about who are those people? Who do you build those relationships with? And so now this third thing is you need to be where the Air Force buyers are looking. So I said this earlier, I think that the Air Force does not buy from the best. They buy from the best who show up. So either you show up knocking on their door or you show up where they're looking, like if they're looking at a tool. In this case, I said DSBS, the Dynamic Small Business Search Tool. It's now been renamed in the last couple of weeks by the SBA, because yet another brilliant renaming from Twitter to X and PTAC to Apex Accelerator, but dsbs.sba.gov. If you go there right now, 80% of small businesses are invisible to the buyers who want to work with you. The Air Force wants to work with you, but they go in there and you're invisible. So I encourage you to go to dsbs.sba.gov, check your company profile out right now. Whether you can edit it doesn't matter. Look at it and go, does that make us proud? The worst thing about it is it's not making us proud or not proud. It's just making us invisible. Do something to make yourself visible in there. Industry days. This is a huge one within the Air Force because they do a lot of these industry engagement days where they're talking about their opportunities coming down, or they're doing advanced planning briefs about multiple opportunities, what they want from industry, et cetera. And so you can go in there and engage with buyers, and you're being where they're at. So if you get in there and have a conversation, you're able to move forward. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago who was saying exactly to this point. He goes into these meetings and he goes, hey, I was reading about your challenges ahead of time, or maybe I heard you say it from stage or whatever it is. And we actually built a solution that aligns this way that we were doing somewhere else. And that person will sit there and go, hey, let's get a meeting. Let's have a 15-minute meeting, see if it makes sense to explore this further. And at industry days, you're not going to have this big powwow session, but you can get in front of the buyers where they're looking. And then the last one that I had here is RFI responses. By the way, the reason I say this is because when I say be where the Air Force looks, they don't really have a supplier portal of their own that I've ever found. I've found them for all sorts of federal agencies and companies, but the Air Force pretty much goes to DSBS as their way, right? But the best way, in my opinion, to get in front of federal buyers, Air Force in particular, is to write an RFI response. When you write an RFI or sources sought response back to the government, to the Air Force buyer, you're on their radar. It's as if you just had a meeting with them and you're telling them the best thing about your company and your approach to their challenges. Whether you win the contract or not, if you're trying to get into like AFLC, LMC, Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, if you're trying to get in there and you're responding to RFIs, you're on their radar, not just the contracting officers, but anybody else who's evaluating that RFI response. The program office is getting wind of this stuff. And so that's a great way to be where they're looking. They're looking at the responses to the RFIs, the sources sought that they put out. So if you want to be visible to Air Force buyers, be visible in the comment. Let me know you want to be found by them, that you're willing to do what it takes to be found. I see some people got a little ahead of that. That's what I get for putting it on my slide, but it's good. I appreciate it. Hey, I wanted to pause for a second to just thank the sponsors for today's live. Graham has been a longtime sponsor, does staffing support services and American Sign Language services. So if you know anybody who needs those, please reach out to Graham. They might be in the training today. Thank you very much. Steel Toed, they do CMMC and cybersecurity support, especially as you're looking forward into DoD and you're thinking about at the very least being CMMC level 1 certified. You want to be tracking on getting that. They can help you. Restream is how I do all this. I know I knocked them a little bit early on, but sometimes it's more LinkedIn than Restream. But I've done almost 1,000 of these lives for the last 3-4 years. I pretty much have been going live every day at 12 o'clock here, East Coast time, on LinkedIn and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and that goes through Restream. So appreciate them making that happen. And then Call Plan AI is my company. So I'd love to have you check it out, but I'll talk about it later if I have time so I can make sure I give you the last slide. So how do you find Air Force opportunities? These guys make it impossible, right? And I say that softly because I love the Air Force. Like the things they do are just cutting edge. And I'm pretty much an IT guy, and they're always kind of on the forefront. But when you think about the easiest way for an agency to communicate with us is a long-range acquisition forecast. They call them an LRAF, right? Long-range acquisition forecast. They have none. If you go in, all you see is one little link, and that link is basically an export from FPDS of expiring contracts. That's not a forecast. That's a data dump. A forecast is, hey, we've already talked among ourselves and sent to the president a recommended budget for 2026. And these are the things we're going to be buying. If they were going to be really good, they'd give us that. But that being said, just because they don't have a long-range acquisition forecast doesn't mean I can't find opportunities. Here's the way I'd recommend you find opportunities. Obviously, you go into FPDS, like I mentioned earlier, but you can find expiring contracts. This is the best way to fill your pipeline, is with contracts that have already been funded by the Air Force previously, and they're probably going to award them again. I'll look into 2026 and say which contracts are expiring. Those contracts that are expiring, I'm going to put them in my pipeline if I love them, if they align to my core competency. You can do that same thing and you can pursue it. You find a lot of opportunities in there. And if you're newer, find them, go find a teammate and say, hey, we can do this part if you guys prime it. Second way is SAM. And inside of SAM, you can have 3 different ways of looking at the opportunities. The first one is RFIs as sources sought. I mentioned that before. These are about opportunities that are coming down the pike. Sometimes they're coming down in 3 months. Sometimes they're coming down in 3 years. But like I said, they're a way for you to track opportunities that are out there so you can get them into your pipeline. And no matter how long it takes, if it aligns to your core competency, you just slowly pursue it to a win. You have RFQs and RFPs, the request for quote and proposal. You can find those in there. Those are for work that the government needs done right now. They're buying right now. And then the last one inside of SAM is you can look at the inactive entries in there and look at all the awards, and you can track on that. Similar to FPDS with a different level of data, you can find the awards of opportunities you wish you had won and start tracking those down as opportunities for when they get recompeted. Another way to find opportunities, and this is really important, is to start learning how the Air Force buys, which contract vehicles it uses, like Oasis, let's say. You want to find out from those 7 people you're talking to, what are the top contract vehicles used for what I sell? If you did some research and had a couple of meetings and you made that one question you would ask everybody every time, you'll find out like the top 5. Then go find the people who have the prime contract for that contract vehicle, make friends, get on there, be able to track the opportunities. And you'll hear about opportunities that are never on SAM or any of these other easy places. You'll be able to hear about it because you got on that contract vehicle. Not officially, but just like as a teaming partner to a degree. And then my favorite way, going back to those 7 people you need to work with, you need to build strategic relationships. Strategic relationships allow you to hear about opportunities. If you've ever seen my 7-step process for federal revenue success, step 4 is strategic relationships. And what I say is those lead to opportunities. That's how you hear about opportunities, not SAM, not GovWin, strategic relationships. Of course, you can learn about those opportunities from tools, but you want to hear about opportunities from people. When you hear about opportunities from people, you're hearing about it in a whole different way. So get those strategic relationships in place and you're going to start hearing about more opportunities. Okay, here's what I want you to remember from today's training about doing business with the Air Force. First off, congratulations. The Air Force has the anticipated largest budget of any of the departments that are out there. And so that's huge for FY 2026. That's coming up here in October. The second thing, and by the way, October sales is happening right now. A lot of us tend to think about end of the year sales, but what the government buys in October and November, they're researching in 2025, FY 2025. All right, second thing is they absolutely need what you sell. You'll be a rare business that doesn't sell what they need. You might sell, Army uniforms or something, but pretty much, in fact, that's DLA for everybody anyways, but you should be knocking on their door because you can go in there and see what they buy. Every one of them communicates very clearly what they buy. You just go to FPDS and find out who's buying within the Air Force what you sell. But I know they need what you sell and they need to hear from you. They need to hear from your company. They want to hear from your company. They look at you as the defense industrial base. You are who's going to enable them to do the mission. It's your responsibility and your opportunity to reach out to them and start building those relationships. So make that happen. Don't forget about tomorrow's training. I'm going to be talking about how to do business with the Navy. Go over into LinkedIn and make sure you're registered for that. And if you're looking to build strategic relationships, I talk about these all the time. I built Call Plan AI, www.callplanai, specifically for this. Because I very recently launched this new service, it's great, it's a great product, but it's new and I'm trying to get more feedback. Because I'm doing that, I'll give you 90% off for life if you're an early subscriber. So go check it out and watch the little video I have over there that explain it. For all of us, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret, it's just a process. I will see you in the next training.